open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Albie Amancona, along with Matthew Stadlen, Lynn May, Benjamin Loughnane, Leo Kearse. Tonight on the show... Benjamin, what are you talking about today?
Well, I believe that we should abolish the office of the Mayor of London.
I believe that cancel culture is ruining comedy. Matthew, what are you talking about today?
I'm going to ask all of you guys and people at home what single reason they can give me to vote Conservative at the next general election.
Interesting. Lynn, what are you talking about today?
Well, as Brexiteers, I think we need to accept we need migration.
Leo Kearse, what are you talking about today?
I'm going to be talking about Sadiq Khan's Mate campaign that is attempting to stop misogyny and why he's a total hypocrite.
It's 8 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5. It's Darren's birthday today. Happy 40th, Darren. And Emily and Benjamin have also taken the week off in solidarity. So I'm joined by brilliant broadcaster and podcaster Matthew Stadlen, fearless political commentator and social commentator Lynn May, research fellow at the Bow Group and GB News favourite Benjamin Loughnane, and comedian and star of our hit late-night paper review show, Leo Kearse. The premise of the show is simple. Each host gets around 60 seconds to outline their argument about a chosen topic, then we all pile in and it gets uglier than a Tory vote count in Selby. And of course, we want to know your views, so please do get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday Night News with Rory Smith.
Thank you very much. Sir Keir Starmer has held talks with London's Mayor Sadiq Khan after he blamed the expansion of ULEZ for Labour's by-election loss in Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Protesters gathered outside the BBC in London today, with many expressing anger at the Mayor's plans to expand the ultra-low emissions zone. The Labour leader says that while his party is reflecting on the reasons for the by-election loss, they must show historic levels of effort, discipline and focus. More children will be allowed to use electronic passport gates at airports. From Monday, the age of those permitted to use the e-gates will be lowered from 12 to 10. The change comes following successful trials at 3 of London's major airports. Well, it comes as the RSC is warning of a busy weekend on the roads, with 2.5 million trips expected to be made tomorrow. It comes as passengers are facing a 1-hour delay at border checks at the port of Dover. Enhanced post-Brexit passport checks by French border officials have increased processing times. And families going on European beach holidays are being hit by higher prices compared with last summer due to inflation. New figures in the Post Office show the cost of meals, drinks and beach items have risen year on year. Puglia in Italy was the only location where prices for UK visitors have dropped. The highest annual increases are in Bulgaria, Turkey and Madeira. Tom Jones has criticised the decision to prevent choirs from singing one of his classic songs at rugby matches. Delilah was first cut from choir playlists in 2015 before being officially removed this year due to concerns over its references to the murder of a woman. Playing to a crowd last night, Sir Tom said that while the choir has stopped singing the song, the crowd couldn't be stopped and he will keep singing it as well. England have won their first Women's World Cup match with a 1-0 victory over Haiti in Brisbane. It took 29 minutes for Georgia Stanway to push the Lionesses into the lead with a retaken penalty. They've lost just once in 33 games under their new current manager and will take on Denmark in their second group match next week. Very best of luck to them. TV, online, DAB+ radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now though, back to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Albi Amnicona and I can promise you are in for a very lively hour. So let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Up first, it's Benjamin and he's going to tell us about why he thinks we should abolish the office of the Mayor of London. Take it away, Benjamin.
We've had a Mayor of London for about 25 years now, just under 25 years, and I'm ready now to declare it a failed experiment. I think the Mayor of London as an office has become a point of discord with the government. When you have a mayor who's not from the same party as the government, it ends up in warring, fighting between the government, the two sides pushing against each other, and it becomes performative. It becomes woke virtue signalling, as we've seen from Sadiq Khan, with, as Lee is going to mention later, the mate campaign. You know, stop misogyny by just saying mate. I mean, what is he doing? Whilst you've got the trains out on a strike, he's putting up billboards in the middle of London telling people to just, you know, mind your microaggressions a little bit. It's absolutely ridiculous. We've had a Lord Mayor of London for nearly 1,000 years, and that's worked pretty well. I think London was better under that than it is under the likes of Sadiq Khan. So I'm proposing, very simply, we just scrap the whole thing altogether, go back to local government as we had before, and be done with it.
Benjamin, that's a very interesting view. Would you have the same point of view if there was a Conservative mayor as the Mayor of London?
Well, I think even when you had Ken Livingstone in power, Labour were in power, and it worked a bit better because you had the government in, you know, line lockstep with London. And as the capital city, it represents the entire country. And I think when you've got London at odds with the rest of the country, no longer representing the nation properly, that becomes a real problem, becomes a sticking point.
Matt Stabden, I feel like you might disagree with Benjamin Locknone.
I don't actually disagree strongly with you. It's not something that I'd given much thought to previously. In fact, the first time I've considered it, the idea of abolishing the mayoralty, is when you've come out with it. I think you make some reasonable points, whether or not you like Sadiq Khan, whether or not you like Boris Johnson before him. But I think a big metropolis like London, a major capital city, in my view, as a Londoner born and bred, the greatest city on the planet, probably deserves a democratically elected figurehead.
Well, I'd be willing to have a compromise where you say the government appoints from their own party a mayor for London, rather than having it electorally and done so that there's this discord between the two parties. It just ends in warring and fighting, because you've got the head of a capital city against the government.
Look, I think it's up to each mayor and each government to try to work as constructively as they can with each other. And at the moment, of course, there seems to be discord between the Labour Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the Labour leadership.
Yeah,
that's true. Never mind with the Conservative government. But I think the idea of a government imposing on a capital city a mayor would be anti-democratic.
But I think you're both wrong, because government actually doesn't work best when the mayor and the national government would be working in lockstep. It works best when they're at loggerheads and they can't agree on anything and they stymie each other's plans and they can't get anything done, because then they don't interfere with people's lives. The best form of government. This is why Trump was such a great president, because you know, so many of his plans.
Trump was a great president,
Leo. He was a fantastic president. He had great ideas. He didn't actually get to inflict them on anyone because the Senate and the House would stop them. The best government is no government.
Well, I can't wait for Labour to have a minority government.
Lynn
May,
has the Mayor of London, the office of the Mayor of London, not actually achieved some good things for London? Isn't power closer to people a good thing?
I think so. I think also when Boris was mayor, people absolutely loved Boris. And like you said, Ken Livingstone, when he was there, he did some great things. I think, Ben, if I'm going to be honest with you, your issue is more about who it is as opposed to there being a mayor.
Because that's a fact.
You sound really... Your argument wasn't about... It wasn't strong enough to say we shouldn't have one. It was more about I don't like Sadiq Khan and his wokery.
No, but also the Conservatives have completely given up on London. They don't think it's winnable. They can't even select a decent candidate because they've gone, well, we're not going to win it anyway. So at this point, it's just a one-party
Conservatives just held Uxbridge in London. So how can you say that the Conservatives
I'm saying they've lost the confidence.
given up in London when they've just retained a seat in London?
I'm not saying they've given up in London as a whole. I mean, in terms of the mayor of London, they're not even trying. They can't select a decent candidate. But the thing is, Uxbridge has proven that it is winnable. You know, Mayor Khan is beatable. They just can't pick a good candidate to go up against him because they don't think they're going to win it.
I think, actually, that Boris Johnson was the exception that made the rule. We all know, and I was not a fan, I'm not a fan of Boris Johnson, and I sort of made that very clear on social media and TV programmes. But one thing that is undeniable about that man is that he had an electoral capacity that far exceeded any of his colleagues. He managed to win a safe Labour city in quite spectacular fashion. And I'm not surprised that the Tories can't put forward a particularly good candidate, because, as you say, they probably don't think they have any hope whatsoever. Does that mean I think that Mayor Khan is a good mayor? I mean, the idea of telling people that they can't call each other mate seems to be absurd. There are more important things to be focusing on. Just to quickly jump in on what Leo said, because you lobbed that grenade in, and I don't know how provocative you were meaning to be, but if you don't have government...
chest open.
If you don't have government... It's still intact, my chest. I've still got my peg. If you don't have government, you don't get healthcare, you don't get...
Yes, you do.
Police...
You go to a private provider.
Oh, so you can maybe afford a private provider, but millions and millions and millions of people, of our fellow citizens, cannot afford that, as you well know.
I think, well, how come they can afford the NHS?
Because those with broader shoulders contribute sufficiently to mean that those who can't afford the NHS still get treated.
So we're going to move on to the next argument, but we're still kind of talking about the mayoralty, aren't we, Leo? So Leo is going to tell us his views on Sadiq Khan's latest anti-misogyny campaign. Leo, take it away.
So Sadiq Khan has brought out this interactive video that's to combat misogyny. And it's as terrible as you might imagine. We've got a clip of it here.
Reviewed. Oh, my days. Is that a bird running the line? So what, now I've got women telling me I'm wrong about football as well?
That's true, bro.
What do they know about the game, man?
Did you not watch the Women's Euros? It's pretty decent.
Yeah,
pretty decent.
It's pretty good. Yeah, for a laugh. That stuff's a joke. Mind you, some of them players are pretty fit, though.
So in this video, this guy carries on saying increasingly more misogynist things, and you're encouraged to click a button that says, mate, to jump in and stop him before it escalates into a full-blown hate crime. If only Fred West had seen this video, we might have saved some lives there. I think this video is ridiculous, and I can't abide it. Not because no men talk like that. I mean, no men sit around saying, oh, yeah, did you see the Women's Euros Weren't they great? Well, no, the Women's Euros weren't great. Women's football is sort of like socialism. It gets praised a lot in The Guardian, but it's terrible in actuality. I'm not annoyed because of that. I'm not annoyed because the only bad guy in it is the white guy. I mean, it's 2023. That's the law in adverts. Unless, if you're a white guy, you're definitely going to be playing a gambling addict or an alcoholic or some kind of misogynist. And I feel terrible for all these men coming from Afghanistan to London because they're going to be exposed to white British misogyny. It's awful for them. I'm not annoyed because it's encouraging people to police jokes and microaggressions and behaviour like this horrible nudge unit that controls every aspect of our lives but doesn't have any actual, meaningful reality in terms of reducing real misogyny and violence against women. I'm annoyed because Khan is a total hypocrite. He's spoken at events that required women to use a different door to men. He's spoken at events that have platformed Islamic extremists who aren't known for their lack of misogyny when they're stoning women to death. Sadiq Khan's party has held events where men and women have been segregated, sitting on separate sides of the room. And let's not forget, it was the Labour establishment who looked the other way when the grooming gang scandal was going on. So Sadiq Khan, you're a total hypocrite, and mate, you need to look in the mirror and sort yourself out.
This is getting me going, right? So, first of all, I don't know whether we're supposed to be calling each other mate or not mate. I said earlier that I thought that Mayor Khan was saying that we shouldn't be, but I don't know, maybe we should be. I don't know.
He's saying you are, but you've got to follow up with something that nobody would say in real life.
I think Sadiq Khan should probably stay out of these sorts of adverts, OK? I don't think he should micromanage the way we live our lives. That's bizarre for someone who's supposed to be getting on with transport as his main function and policing. But just to pick up on a sort of bizarre comment that you made, Leo, women's football you just dismissed.
Yeah.
Now, I will readily, yes, I have. I will readily tell you.
That's the pain you'll go through to prove how left-wing you are. Leo, you'll actually watch women's football. I'm impressed.
You didn't let me finish. I don't watch much women's football. I'm too busy watching men's football or watching men's cricket.
Yeah.
But 90,000 people turned up to watch the women win the Euros at Wembley last year.
To win the Euros.
So hang on. Wembley, I wanted to take a friend to one of the England women's game. I think it was against the USA, one of the best teams in the world. It was a friendly earlier this year. It may have had a competitive element. 90,000 people went. I couldn't get a ticket. I can get a ticket to every England men's game, non-competitive game at Wembley. Women's football is taking off, and I'll tell you why it's important. I'll just quickly tell you why it's important, because it does matter. It means that if I'm lucky enough to have a girl as a parent moving forward, she will be able to represent England at football, have a jolly good go at it, whereas when I was growing up, the girls that I grew up with, they didn't dream like that because it wasn't possible.
Slightly deviating from the main point. Lynn May, I'm interested in your opinion because, of course, you are the woman on the panel.
I know.
Do these campaigns, such as the Mate campaign, do they make you feel safe on the streets of London?
No, it doesn't. I didn't even understand it. When we were talking about it, I was like, what are you saying, mate or May? Or, like, how does that make me feel safe? But the bigger issue for me is, and I know some may agree or disagree, but my issue is we don't ever question women, me being a woman, when we say about men, oh, he's useless at the laundry, oh, he's just, he's being a typical bloke. Isn't that misandry? That never gets brought up. And we are hugely, as women, when we get together, we're so critical of you guys. We think you're idiots sometimes. Is anyone going to do a campaign for that? So I'm all for the promotion of a level playing field for women, but we're getting to a place now where we're actually putting down men consistently to make us feel that we're being uplifted. And to me, that's just anti-progression.
Yeah, and it's driving young men are being driven into the arms of, Andrew Tate and people like
incels,
that. They're the only people
incels,
who stand up for them and say, no, you do have value. You should have self-confidence, You go, girl, or whatever the male equivalent is.
But violence against women and girls is a big issue, Benjamin Loughnane. Is there a place for these campaigns in public life?
Not this campaign, because it's massively backfired, because now if you say mate, it's going to sound ironic, like you're actually having a laugh at the campaign because it's become a meme. The mate thing has massive... And how much money did they spend on this? They've got huge adverts up in Piccadilly Circus that just say mate with 3 A's. I mean, is that a good use of taxpayer money in London when you've got stuff like TfL crumbling? You can't get a train, strikes on.
As an alternative?
He should do his job.
Well,
he needs to do his job. He doesn't need to deal with this. This is...
No, I understand that, but going back to what Albie said, it's still a real thing in terms of
Absolutely,
issues that women
yeah.
face.
And
So if you were given the budget to do a marketing campaign, what would your marketing campaign look like?
I don't think a marketing campaign would solve the issue. You need to actually deal with the issue in real terms, in real communities, not just put together.
If armed women, if all women had guns...
Legalise guns.
You did...
Leo, stop. I mean, not stop. You say what you want.
No,
but the idea of arming women with guns...
Oh, you think women
for
can't handle
goodness
guns?
No, anyone can handle a gun, but if you have a gun, you're going to
It doesn't strike me.
Guns into the mix.
It doesn't strike me, Leo, as a particularly British thing to be arming people with guns.
He's joking. He's
it's not very
right?
British, is it? But Matt Sadler, I'm assuming you voted for Sadiq Khan at the last mayoral election. Perhaps you'll vote for him again next year. But do you like these kinds of policies?
No, I just, as I've said already, I think this is micromanaging on the part of the London mayor, and he should stay out of it. My only dealing with Sadiq Khan was playing cricket against him for the press, for the politicians, and I hit him back over his head either for a 4 or 6. I can never remember. Just on your point, which I think was an interesting and important one, of course, none of us, well, I'm certainly not in favour of misandry. OK, and I'm sure that women can talk very badly about men, and that women talking badly about men doesn't promote women. It does us all down. So I agree with you on that. There probably has had to have some sort of rebalancing, though, between the genders, between the sexes in recent years, because we have lived in a society historically where men have had the upper hand.
No, I don't agree with that, because that's like saying it's OK for black people to be racist, to recalibrate the situation of racism, and I don't agree with that. It's the same logic. It's the same logic of if someone hits you, thump them back because violence is asked because they did that.
No, just to be very clear, because people need to understand what I'm saying here. I'm not condoning misandry as a rebalancing. What I'm saying is that, and I don't think this advert has struck the right tone, and I don't think it's Sadiq Khan's place, but I do think that campaigns against violence towards women, for example, have been necessary, and I'd absolutely back those.
I do agree to a certain degree. I'm not anti the campaign. It's a crap campaign. But the issue is campaigns, unfortunately, if they're done properly, it becomes the issues that we're facing that we heard in that advert, those are the norm. Derogatory conversation around women. But then at the same time, I'm light-hearted. If it's in the comfort of people's own home, why can't you say, oh, God, if his opinion is women's football's crap, then he thinks there's nothing wrong with that. I might disagree with that. I disagreed with what you said. But the point is, why should we prevent someone from saying that? We're getting to a place where we cannot say anything.
Yeah, it's overplaced.
But Lynn May, when it comes to violence against women and girls, and we look at the levels of crime in London at the moment, as a woman, do you feel safe on the streets of London? And did campaigns like this make you feel like Sadiq Khan was doing anything to change it?
No, that one didn't. And do I feel safe? I grew up in Tottenham, so, I think I can challenge quite a lot of issues that London may throw at me. But at the same time, that is something that I would like to see more of, empowering women to deal with things as opposed to us cowering in the corner. The whole point of the initial feminism was to make us feel stronger. Tiptoeing around on eggshells about, oh, you can't say this, is not empowering me as a person. If anything, that's making me seem like a fragile individual. So I don't feel things like that actually help.
Leo, you've got a little girl, I believe. How do you feel as a parent bringing up a little girl in London about the city that she will be living in?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to move to Australia, honestly. So, yeah, I mean, I don't like the way Britain is heading. But we're going to teach her MMA as well.
Yeah, things like that. I would like to see more of initiatives surrounding self-defence and I know a lot of women are going to disagree with me, but I also think women need to have a level of accountability. So, again, growing up in Tottenham, you just wouldn't go certain places or you wouldn't have your headphones, or I would like to see a campaign surrounding us being aware of our surroundings, because the reality is you're never going to eradicate men who do certain things to women.
I understand the sentiment of that, and it's sort of superficially at least. And you may be, I'm not saying you're wrong, but the problem is it gets very close to victim blaming that. The problem with violence...
I don't agree with
the problem with violence against women is men, and that's it. And we have to sort ourselves out. How we go about doing that is difficult, and you're always going to get wrong. And so, on a national level, I don't think there should be campaigns for women saying don't go there, because that's a very slippery road. Should parents? Let me
come back to Matthew on this.
And should Leo, as a dad, teach his daughter common sense so that she's careful going out at night? She's
obviously going to learn common
sense. But what you're doing, Matthew, and many people are doing, is we're convoluting two different issues here. One, we're talking about violence against women. If you say, oh, women's football's rubbish, or God, this woman can't drive, typical woman driver, I don't see that as violence.
No.
Why are we convoluting the two things?
Sorry, I haven't said that was violent.
I'm just saying what we're doing.
You were talking about
we're mixing two things
of a campaign in which women take accountability and they don't go certain areas. I don't want my city, London, to be a place where women are told they can't go there. I want my city, in London, to be a place where men are told, sort yourself out, because otherwise you're going to jail.
Yeah, but come on,
no, but that's not a reality. That's not the reality. London is always going to have crime.
It is.
If you look at, for example, we're told to lock our doors at night to stop burglars.
Yeah.
We're told to use, not park in certain areas because there's car crime. People could break into the car.
Oh, wait, who tells us to lock our
doors
at night?
We know.
Our insurance companies tell us that. Our insurance companies tell us that.
We need to have campaigns so burglars know they shouldn't walk into our houses.
Yeah, what I'm saying, just to be crystal clear, you as a dad, we met in a maternity ward, didn't we? So our baby's a similar age. Mine is a boy. I'm just going to be probably getting him to talk martial arts as well. But you as a dad, I would suggest, without wishing to lecture you, I'd say the same to myself as the father of a girl. Obviously, you bring your daughter up to warn her that you've got to be careful in certain situations. Yeah. Should we at a national level, as commentators, or should politicians at a national level send out the signal that women are not safe in certain places or shouldn't go there? No, I think that's the role of the parent. The state cannot endorse male violence.
Yeah, but you're not going to have a campaign like this deter a murdering rapist from doing what he's going to do. It's not realistic. He's not going to look at that and think, oh, I'm going to change my mind about raping her tonight, you know? But we're going to have these dangerous people.
Here?
For us, like I said, if there's always going to be rapists, there's always going to be murderers. I'm not saying we should give them a pass. The justice system is there to deal with them. I'm saying women as well, we need to be a little more careful. I remember I said something on Twitter where, if you are a young lady and you know that it's a crime-riddled area, why do you have headphones at midnight going through the park? It's common sense to avoid that. Now, why should that person say to me, I should be able to go at midnight where there's rapists all the time and just, and no one should affect me? That is idealistic. It's not reality.
We're going to wrap up that debate now, but still to come will be Lynn May, and she's going to be telling us why the United Kingdom needs migrants. And I'll be telling you about why cancel culture is ruining comedy. Matthew will also be asking why anyone would vote Tory at the next election. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you for all of your emails about tonight's topics. Jill says that new guy Matthew is right. Of course London needs a mayor. It's the greatest city on the planet and we want someone focused on the issues which matter to us. But Dan says, too right, Benjamin and Leo. Politicians are all clueless. The less we have of them, the better. Now it's time for our next debate. Up next, it's Lynn May, and she's going to be telling us why the UK needs more migrants. Take it away.
Now, may I say, it is time for us as Brexiteers, because I know many of you are, some on the panel are as well, for us to admit we need migrants. Now, I voted for Brexit for the simple fact that I agreed we needed to lower migration, especially when the Conservative mandate in 2019 stated that that's what they would do, but they have not. Now, I was hoping the government, post-Brexit, would have initiatives that would inspire people who are probably not working, young people, to really retain our labour force and get them into jobs where we have shortages. Unfortunately, that has not occurred. 1 in 6 individuals who work for the NHS are non-British nationals. Now, what would we do without migrants? So I have to admit we need migrants. Now, it's not something I think we should have to rely on for the simple fact, not only because we should utilise our own talent here, but also because it leads to brain drain in other countries. They need their workers. So no one is at a win at this situation. But here we are, we need migrants.
Lynn, you are probably at odds with most of the British public on that opinion. I'm sure many of our viewers will be screaming at the televisions at you saying that we need more migrants. Net migration was what, 600,000 this year? Can you really justify that we need more migrants than 600,000?
So here's the thing, and this is what frustrates me. When people say we need them to leave, we don't want migrants, they confuse the different types of migrants and immigrants. I totally support people say we are fed up of illegal immigration, even though there's not enough safe routes. But I agree with that. We should not be allowing people to enter our shores illegally. It sends out the wrong message. However, they are incredibly different to those who actually come here on a 5-year visa, who are actually doing us a favour by working in healthcare, We even recently heard on the news that the government now have conceded that they have to relax the visa requirements for the construction industry. I work in the construction industry. I put out to tender on a regular basis requirements for bricklayers, for scaffolders, for roofers. We just do not have the people. And like I said, I wish as soon as Brexit, we've known Brexit was happening for a long time, I would have thought there was going to be so many programmes and initiatives and incentives to get our own people into these fields, but it's not happening. So if we then go with, I know Ben is desperate to disagree with me, if we just go with what Ben is about to say...
anti-migration, I think that's safe to say. What do you think about what Lynn's saying?
It's just absolute nonsense what you're saying. I mean, if you look at since we had mass immigrations, 97, 98 under Blair, it's gone up. everything's got worse. The economy's never been worse. The NHS is on, its
And that's down to migrants, is it?
No, I'm saying that it hasn't improved the country in a way that you're saying it has.
But it's not down to migrants.
It hasn't boosted the economy. We're not better than ever. If anything, we're worse than ever. So it's clearly not the panacea to all our problems. Just bring more people in.
I don't want to be rude, and I'm going to say something that may come across as rude. It's not intended to be, but that is economically illiterate.
No, it's not.
The reason why
I'm sorry, but there's a massive housing crisis. You can't get homes. How are things better? It's just nonsense.
Of course, there is pressure on housing and there is pressure on our public services. But as Lynn has very articulately pointed out, we won't have a functioning NHS. I mean, it's not functioning very well, but it would be functioning even less well without people coming from other countries.
Well,
No, but the economics are very important.
Our country's more...
The economics... We are... Just 2 points. One is we are an ageing population, right?
Yeah.
So we need to encourage people to have children.
Exactly.
The major way of... People aren't having children because they can't afford houses.
Exactly, because of migration.
People can't afford houses because we've got unlimited immigration. We've got gross figures of over 1 million. Up until the 90s, we were seeing about 50,000 a year, which is a totally manageable amount.
OK, can I just
We've got
ask?
this incredible experiment since then where we're having...
I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up that debate here, unfortunately. I'm sure we could go on for much longer. But still coming up, I'm going to be talking about why cancel culture is destroying comedy. Matthew Sadlin is wondering why on earth anyone would vote for the Conservatives. Will anyone have any answers for him? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a dull and gloomy start to the weekend. Things do look a little bit brighter for some on Sunday, but all this unsettled weather is due to this area of low pressure moving eastwards across the UK throughout this weekend. Now, looking at the detail for tonight's weather, and across much of Scotland it will be dry with some clearer spells, so a cool night to come here. But elsewhere, plenty of cloud around and some strong winds too, especially for English Channel coasts where we could see local coastal gales. So temperatures for many tonight not dropping out of the teens. So another dull and cloudy start to Sunday morning for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland, with heavy rain across northern England and into northern parts of Wales that could bring some localised disruption. Either side of this, some brighter spells and the odd shower too, but temperatures faring a little bit better tomorrow compared to today, with highs of 23 in the southeast. Now looking into the new week, and that band of rain from tomorrow will continue to sink its way southwards, but cooler, fresher and drier conditions following in behind. So a little bit of a better start to the new week, but as we go towards the middle part of the week, more rain moving in from the west and those temperatures not looking like they're going to get much above average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. The emails are coming in thick and fast. On Sadiq Khan's Mate campaign, Cassie says, I love Lynn. These campaigns don't help women. Mind you, my hubby is useless at the laundry, and I promise I don't hate men. Now it's time for our next debate. Up next, oh, it's my turn. Well, off I go. So cancel culture is a cancer on society, but nowhere is it more obvious than when it comes to comedy. It seems that comedians can't tell simple jokes anymore. You watch comedians nowadays, and none of it is very funny, unless, of course, it's one of our own, like Leo Kearse, because he's not afraid to offend people. But nowadays, the people that are watching comedy are too concerned about being virtue signalling, and they're too concerned about what these comedians are saying about things, instead of just going to the comedy for a good laugh. We need to get back to a point in comedy and also other forms of art where artists are just allowed to be artists, where they don't have to be too concerned about offending people. We need comedy to be funny again. And comedy's not going to be funny as long as people are concerned about cancel culture. Leo, you're a comedian.
I am.
You don't strike me as someone that is that concerned about cancel culture.
Yeah,
but do you feel...
That's why I've been cancelled. That's why I'm here.
but do you feel, as a comedian, that your colleagues feel that they are holding back?
Oh, absolutely. I was at a comedy club with my mate Nico that I do a podcast with, and another comedian came up to him and said, are you right-wing? The optics on your Twitter are right-wing. To Nico, and he's just, you know, he's got family values, I guess. But, yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous for comedians to be worried about optics, like they're Keir Starmer, focus grouping and opinion. Man, you're supposed to speak from your heart, speak your own personal truth. And then, you know, people can take it or leave it. People are approaching comedy and coming to comedy clubs in such bad faith these days. I had a complaint email sent into Top Secret Comedy where I was doing a show there, my own show there every month. And somebody wrote in saying, we came to see Leo's show in June and it was horrific and offensive and we were disgusted. And we came to see him again in October and he was still horrific and offensive. Can you please stop putting him on? It's like, there's another solution you might not be looking at here. How about you go and see a comedian you like instead of repeatedly coming to see me to get offended?
Matthew Sadlin, do you feel that as time has gone on, that some jokes just aren't funny anymore and actually it's unacceptable to be telling sexist jokes, for example?
Well, I would just ask Leo where you stand on this. First of all, you haven't been cancelled in the macro picture. You are on a channel that seems to be doing quite well in terms of its audience.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
you just happen to be on national TV. You're given a regular platform, so you are not cancelled.
No, that's absolute nonsense. I've been cancelled for many clubs. I've been cancelled.
You're here. You're here.
But that's not the point. And also, in 2017, when my show was cancelled from the Perth Fringe in Australia, and they turned round to me and they said, "This is an inclusive space." They said, "This is an inclusive space. You have to leave." which doesn't even make sense. If it's inclusive, just let me stay. But when I wasn't on TV then. I mean, everything I've got, I've had to fight for, and I get cancelled from other clubs. My tour this year was cancelled, an entire tour. Okay. Now that's cancel culture. I mean, fair enough. There are some places that haven't shut their door to me, but I mean, my tour was.
Let me come back with a quick question. So, where do you draw the line, or is there no line? Simple question. Should people who make, I'm not saying you do, should people who make fun of black people or Jewish people have a show on national television where they make fun of black people and make fun of Jewish people?
Yes.
Well, if it's funny, let the audience be the judge. This is why comedy doesn't need to be policed. You're performing in front of a jury. You're performing in front of a jury. And do you think, if you get 300 people, just regular members of the public in a theatre, they're going to accept, some horrific. They're going to willingly go and see some sort of hate crime being committed.
I don't like the way that I'm not going to single you out, but many people that speak about cancel culture or we need to be inclusive often bring black people into it. And it's rubbish. If you used to watch Kings of Comedy, if you watch Dave Chappelle, we are the most brutal when it comes to comedy. And if you look at our culture as well, if you travel to the Caribbean, what has made me a resilient, I was born in Barbados, what's made me a resilient woman is literally getting dissed, cursed and made fun of throughout my entire youth. It built resilience. We used to laugh about it around the dinner table and it brought us closer together as family.
Lynn, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cancel this debate. But still ahead, Matthew Stadlen is wondering why on earth anyone would vote for the Tories. Will anyone have any answers for him? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, apocalyptic weather forecasts fan the flames of climate hysteria. How ironic that Brits have had the coldest July in living memory. In my take at 10, Harry and Meghan are rumoured to be on the brink of divorce. I don't want to see any marriage end, but if they were to split, we should welcome him home. Plus, I'll be meeting the author and close friend of America's most influential broadcaster, Tucker Carlson. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Mary says, great topic, Albie. Thank you, Mary. Please can we let comedians joke about what they want without fear? We are adults and can pick and choose who we want to watch. Now, it's time for our final debate. Matthew, take it away.
So, thank you, Albie. I'm a late substitute for this show. Haven't had a chance to prepare what I'm going to say, but it's quite easy, it's quite straightforward. Even if you're not a massive fan of Keir Starmer, even if he doesn't excite you, even if you don't think he's terribly charismatic, you probably accept that he has dragged the Labour Party back almost from the brink of extinction under the disastrous leadership of Jeremy Corbyn. But what I'm sure you must agree with me on is this. The Conservatives have been in power, initially, yes, with the Liberal Democrats, for 13 years. And I want to know from you, from the panels, but also from you at home, whether you seriously think that you are better off now than you were in 2010? Are you better off now than you were even in 2019 when Boris Johnson came to power or won that election? Is the NHS in a better or worse state? How are you finding your local policing? Do you feel properly safe on the streets? How has this Conservative government got a grip on one of its supposedly flagship policies, and that is the crossings over the Channel in the rubber dinghies? Whatever you think of that, whether you have sympathy like I do or you don't for people who are desperate to get to this country, do you seriously think that Rishi Sunak's government or those that have gone before have got a grip? Do you think the economy is going well? Do you support the culture wars? Are you obsessed with whether women can have a penis or not? Or are you concerned, as 11 million of us are, about whether you can actually afford to pay your bills? So my question to these guys, but also to you at home is, can you think of a single reason why you would vote Tory at the next election? A 25-year-old just overturned a 20,000-plus majority in a by-election. I'd like to hear your views, guys.
Why does his age matter?
Well, it's pretty unusual, isn't it? For a 25-year-old to be able to achieve that, it shows to me that there's a problem with the ruling party.
No, not very nice on him.
Well, I have to say...
No, good to him. I'm all for him. Fantastic. But it's unusual.
I've got to take issue with the fact that you think there's a Conservative party to actually vote for the next election. The Conservative party are just exactly the same as Labour. Just some of them went to Eton.
But isn't that part of the problem? If you believe that, as you do, there are very few people on this channel, I would argue, who think the Conservatives are doing a good job. In other words, the Conservatives are not making those on the right happy, and they're certainly not making those on the left happy. So who's going to vote for them and why?
But the same with Labour.
I have to say that it's the first time I've ever really agreed with Matthew on anything. But I've been saying for a while, what is their pitch at the next election? We've been in power for 13 years. Everything's broken and rubbish. Vote for us. We'll keep doing the same thing we've been doing, and it'll just get worse. I mean, the thing is, though, I don't want to vote for Labour. I don't think anyone really wants Keir Starmer or the current Labour Party. But I think it's the greatest opportunity in history for a third party to form. And so all of these small, tiny parties, I think, need to get around the table, talk out their distances, and form a proper option.
That's very difficult, the third parties under first past the post, and no parties.
Well, the
really
Labour Party
emerged.
started as a third party. You had the Liberals and the Tories. They emerged. They put the Liberals into, effectively the history books.
It's not going to happen in this short space
Maybe
of
not,
time,
but they need to get together and start to form some kind of unified party.
What are these two parties that you might be referring to? Reclaim, Reform. I strongly would argue that outside of GB News, outside the GB News viewership, which may be rising, and outside our tiny, teeny world of Twitter, where you and I might be tweeting this and that, almost no one in this country has even heard of them.
Well, I think, any party which says vote for us will leave you alone, I'll vote for.
Well, let's talk about the Labour Party, Matthew Sadler, because I imagine you think that Labour would be better than the Conservatives, but Labour can't even commit to end the cap on the child welfare limit. So how is Labour going to be any different from the Conservatives when they've agreed to the same spending commitments as the Conservatives?
I think the challenge for Labour has been largely about detoxifying itself from Corbynism, and I couldn't vote Labour under the Corbyn leadership, either in 2017 or 2019. And the other challenge is not to score an own goal, and go back to the football analogy. I think it is reasonable, though not particularly inspiring, that Keir Starmer is steadying the ship. He's allowing the Conservatives to do his work for them. They're blowing themselves up. Yes, I would like to see more policy, but for me, a massive priority on this is that I want to see far less of the toxicity that has been encouraged by Rishi Sunak in the form of Suella Braverman, who he gets to do his dirty work talking about invasions, this obsession with culture wars. People vote, generally, on financial grounds, on the economics. People want to have pounds in their pockets. And just very quickly, if you read the Times today, their main story was that Rishi Sunak, he seems desperate because of these by-elections. They only just clung on in Uxbridge. What he wants to do now is to rule, divide and rule.
He was expected to lose.
He wants to divide and rule. And that's not what people want from a leader.
The culture wars do affect what's in people's pockets, because if you can't have a bank account, if you're not allowed to have a job, then the culture war is affecting your ability.
But not just that. I think the Labour Party are just as bad, if not worse, at the culture. Look at Rosie Duffy. Like, how was she treated by her own party just because she essentially stood up for women's rights? So I think it's just disingenuous to just throw the whole toxicity of culture wars and just blame it on Conservatives when we can evidently see that Labour are horrendous when it comes to these sort of...
Rishi Sunak has introduced Lee Anderson, who's a GB News presenter or panellist.
Esteemed colleague.
And the reason he brought him in is because in the same way that he reinstated Suella Braverman a week after she'd had to leave her role as Home Secretary, which was absurd, less than a week, is because he wants Lee Anderson to do his dirty work. He wants to sow division. He thinks his only hope, when 11 million of us are struggling to pay our bills, and that's largely why people vote, pounds in their pocket, the ability to
because
feed
of
their
lockdown,
families.
which Labour were behind. Lockdown would have been even worse if Labour had been in power.
He feels his only hope is to divide and rule, and that's not what people want.
OK, so Matt, if you vote for Labour, can you give me 3 policies why you'd vote for Labour? Because you even said they lack policy. I don't really understand what Keir stands for. One day he's saying about, student fees and he's rescinding on that. Then he changes on other policies. Same with the two-child policy, which you would think that people could turn to Labour for. So why would 3 policies that you'd vote for Labour?
I think it is very normal. That doesn't mean to say it's the right way forward. Although politically I think I can understand it. It's very normal for the leader of the opposition to hold fire on their big gun policies until closer to the election. Why? Because otherwise they might be stolen by the party of...
Or because he doesn't have any.
I mean, it's possible he doesn't. It's possible that Keir Starmer doesn't feel that strongly on enough issues. What I want from him, though, after 13 years of Tory rule, is sensible, moderate leadership and serious grown-up management of the economy.
Well, that's a really...
I feel like I don't really know what Keir Starmer's about. I just think he flip-flops on things. He commits to policies, then goes back on them, and says the Conservatives are awful, but doesn't really seem to have any solutions to problems.
And there's a great reason to vote for the Tories, because it annoys left-wing people. It's glorious on Facebook. All the Jeremy Corbyn supporters be like, oh no, how did this happen?
They don't even like Keir. They don't even like Keir Starmer.
On the Starmer issue, I think that he does need to come out with more things that are relatable, that people can very easily say, this is something I agree with, this is where he's putting his flag.
Matt, thank you very much for that argument. I'm not sure I agree with you, but thank you very much to our guests tonight, and thank you very much everyone who's been watching this evening. Next up, it's the brilliant Mark Dolan. We'll see you again next week.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, my name's Rachel Ayres and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. So it's been quite a dull and gloomy start to the weekend. Things do look a little bit brighter for some on Sunday, but all this unsettled weather is due to this area of low pressure moving eastwards across the UK throughout this weekend. Now, looking at the detail for tonight's weather, and across much of Scotland it will be dry with some clearer spells, so a cool night to come here. But elsewhere, plenty of cloud around and some strong winds too, especially for English Channel coasts where we could see local coastal gales, so temperatures for many tonight not dropping out of the teens. So another dull and cloudy start to Sunday morning for much of England, Wales and Northern Ireland, with heavy rain across northern England and into northern parts of Wales that could bring some localised disruption. Either side of this, some brighter spells and the odd shower too, but temperatures faring a little bit better tomorrow compared to today, with highs of 23 in the southeast.